Hello and welcome to Economic Forum, where we discuss various issues affecting our economy. There may be issues to do with tourism, to do with agriculture, to do with industry, education, and various aspects of our lives. My name is John Masuku. Animation is a growing industry in Zimbabwe, Africa, and many parts of the world. And it is used mainly in education and business. And we'd like to understand what animation is all about, how does it differ, or is it the same as cartoons and so forth, since there is a growing interest in this industry. And we have invited a creative producer, Arthur Mataruse, into the studio to discuss some of these issues. Arthur, welcome to Economic Forum.
Thank you, Amasuku. It's an honor to be here.
Yes. Arthur, maybe let's start off with the difference that I was just mentioning between cartoons and animation. Are we talking about the same thing here?
When we speak about cartoons, we're talking about drawings or sketches or models that are put on a piece of paper or on a wall or something, but it's drawn stuff. When we speak about animation, we're now talking about frames of movement that are put together, whether it's those drawings and then we put different frames of those drawings in a sequence, or we're putting different models that we're now just capturing, or objects that we're capturing moving in a sequence, and we put those frames together to make movement, and that then becomes animation.
Yes, but let's go back to you, Arthur Mataruse, who is known in the industry as Art Baradzanwa Mataruse or Mnyaradzi. Tell us what motivated you to get into this industry, which is becoming very popular, particularly among young people like you.
So when I was a young child, and we were in the DVD era, my siblings started sending DVDs of movies that I liked, and I started watching the behind the scenes of a lot of the movies that they would send. And I started gaining a keen interest in seeing how production works and what it does to make a movie, or what it does to make an end product that people view and enjoy. So from then onwards, that's when I gained the interest and I started speaking to people about it, and that's what got me into the industry.
When I asked you about the cartoons, you said they are a type of animation. But tell us about other types of animation that are well known.
So I'll start with this. That is motion graphics, where we've got logos spinning, where we've got moving objects and text. That's a different type of animation that is called motion graphics, and that's usually used in corporate branding or opening titles on television and movies. And then we have character animation. Character animation, that's when we're looking at children's cartoons, where you have different characters telling a story, and those can be two-dimensional or they can be three-dimensional. Then there's visual effects. So let's say in a movie, you see a UFO hovering over someone, but we know that when that movie was shot, that UFO was not there. So that's also another type of animation. The other types of animation that are there's a very old form of animation that is called stop motion. And stop motion, people will build a set around, let's say on this desk, we build a set and we put objects. And then those different objects, we start making them move, and we capture them frame by frame by frame by frame. And then when we put them together and edit on a timeline, and we see that movement flow, that's stop motion animation.
You mentioned that you were actually motivated by some of the stuff that was being shared by your siblings who were overseas and so forth. But in terms of other creative directors or creative artists like you, where do they get these skills here in Zimbabwe? Who offers the training? Just, is it colleges? Is it universities and so forth?
Some universities are starting to, for instance, the media campus at Chinoy University of Technology, their media section also is now very much involved in animation. And there are animation companies here in Zimbabwe that will take interns for further training. Because as much as you learn stuff in school, it's always better to gain knowledge and ground on the ground, because then you actually get more understanding of how animation is used in the industry. So there are some institutions, some educational institutions that are educating people in the art of animation within a curriculum. But then for aspiring animators to gain more interest and experience, they'll then be put into internship programs in local companies.
Are you aware if animation has already been introduced even at a much lower level, like primary schools, or it's early days?
I am not aware of it. I would really hope so. I would really hope that it is, because I think, in my experience, a lot of people have then realized in their adulthood that this is actually something that they've always wanted to do. So I hope it is something that is then also being put in the curriculum, in the arts curriculum of young children, that there's this path that people can take and then they can flow into the animation realm.
As you got motivated to get into animation, tell us about some of the early stories, probably those who started and what they were doing and what interested people, and whether there is anything like money on the table that you get out of animation, or it's just for fun.
Well, from my experience, a lot of us want to put food on the table while doing what we love. And it's a very interesting thing to balance. So one of my first experiences is a very good friend of mine, Ngobizi Tamlilo. He made one of the earliest local animations, and it was called Ninja Bete. Mm-hmm. And what was very intriguing about it is he actually also did it in 3D. And 3D animation was quite an anomaly at that time. And from that time, I started following local animations, and I've met quite a couple of local animators, and I followed their work on YouTube, and some of them have moved to other parts of the world and are making amazing work.
Okay. Yeah. That's Arthur Mataruse, who is a creative artist. We're talking about the animation industry, which is growing in Zimbabwe as well as in Africa and other parts of the world. And many young people are actually falling for it, and it's actually good business when it comes to education and industry. So join us in the second segment of Economic Forum. We are now in the second segment of Economic Forum, where today we are talking about the animation industry, where my guest here, who is Arthur Mataruse, has just said, well, you want to put food on the table.
Absolutely.
And animation is proving to be one of those industries that is growing and also spinning some money. But very briefly, the process, how does the process go so that people get to know the differences even with other types that you mentioned?
So it really depends on what kind of production that you're working on. The productions that I'm currently working on, we start with the conceptualization. What story do you want to tell, or what end product do you want to put out? Once we've done that, we move into the development stage. To make this product happen, who are we bringing on board, and what skills do we need to carry this product through? From there, we go into pre-production, where we start with the budgeting, financing, and figuring out where we're getting the funds to make this project work. And then once we have the funds to make the project work, we get into production. And production is also now a process on its own that I'll have to break down, which will take a longer time than this.
But you mentioned a very interesting point where you say you have to source for funds. At times that becomes very difficult, and also it affects sustainability. Where are these funds actually sourced? Are you saying animation is being promoted by industry? Is it being promoted by NGOs or by government itself? Where are most of the funds coming from?
At the moment, most of the funds are NGO based. So different cultural funds are available. If you adhere to their call for proposals, then you'll get funds to make an animation story or an animation message according to whatever call for proposals would have been sent out. A lot of animators also, they're doing corporate animation, and a lot of companies do require their branding to be animated, or they'll require what are called explainer videos, whether they're in-house, and then they'll approach animators to make those products for them. So those are the different revenue sources that animators are getting money from.
So Arthur, from what you're saying, there are a lot of opportunities in this industry, the animation industry, especially for those who are interested in the arts.
There are a lot of opportunities, and I think there's a lot of room for a lot of people, and there's a lot of room for growth as well in this industry.
Tell us about animation and education, as we see that we now have ECDs. Is it playing any role? You mentioned even about industry. Let's see animation in action.
The interesting thing about animation is it takes away a lot of types of discrimination when people are watching stuff off screen. So it's really easy to impart educational material through animation. And because it really just makes people less tense about sometimes very hard topics or very difficult to understand topics. So with children, for instance, ECD animation, or what we call edutainment, is you want to impart knowledge to your child, ECD knowledge to your child. And sometimes you can't sit with a book with a child because they get very restless and uneasy. And not every child is enthusiastic about sitting down and learning. So you put on an animation video that is teaching them A, E, I, O, U. And it's a nursery rhyme. And they're watching this animation video. So they get engaged and they're learning at the same time.
While you are there with children, Arthur,
Yes.
You said, in fact, you're emphasizing more of edutainment and not education.
Yes.
Is there a difference that you are trying to put across?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because education is simply 1 + 1 is equal 2.
Yeah.
But edutainment, you're telling the story of how 1 + 1 is equal to 2, or you're singing a song of how 1 + 1 is equal to 2. So you're engaging the children even more through play, through song, so that they're engaged, but also so that they retain the knowledge in their mind.
You are now moving on to adult education.
So adult education, so with animation, how it helps is there are what are called explainer videos. So let's say there was that time when we had COVID, and then people, for some weird reason, were being taught how to wash their hands again. So what an explainer video would tell you is step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4 of how to properly wash your hands. But it's being done in an animated way, and it's a very easy and friendly way for people to receive that information and retain it. And because it also brings down the guard that people have when you use live action, using that animation process is easier, it's quicker, and the visuals are easier on the eye and the brain to receive.
Yeah. I know, Arthur, you do most of your practice here in Zimbabwe as well as in South Africa. But as people in industry and who are encouraging others to get into animation big time, do you sometimes explore how animation is also filtering to the rural areas, mining areas, and other places outside the cities?
We do investigate how that is done. And the most effective way right now is through rural libraries. There are quite a lot of people in the country opening rural libraries. And what we're trying to do as an industry is how do we engage with these rural libraries to make sure that we get our animated content to these rural libraries so that it can be consumed by people who attend those libraries.
How about languages? I think it's one other thing that animation is trying to promote. These animated videos or products, you are doing them in different languages. Tell us about that, especially in Zimbabwe, where our constitution has got 16 languages.
So at the moment, we're working with 3 languages, two Zimbabwean languages and an African languages, Chishona, Sindebele, and Kiswahili. And what languages do is, because children are usually just so glued to the screen, we want them to retain our vernacular languages. Because right now, a lot of children do not even speak our vernacular languages because they're watching cartoons, and most cartoons are in English right now.
Yes. Yeah. So do you think that is becoming effective? And as a result of some of these animation videos that are being produced, you think the quality and the level of local languages among the children is improving?
We can only hope that it improves right now. We're still like
now. You haven't carried out an evaluation.
Yeah, so still now at very early stages. However, the feedback that we have gotten from the parents who message us out of goodwill, they are very impressed with what is going on, and they urge us to keep producing more content.
Well, thank you very much for that, Arthur. That's Arthur Mataruse, who is a creative artist and is explaining to us how the animation industry is growing and how it is being used in education as well as business. So join us in the third and final segment of Economic Forum. We are now in the third and final segment of Economic Forum, where today we are talking about the animation industry with our guest, who is Arthur Mataruse here, and he has been explaining to us how this industry is growing and how it is impacting education as well as business. But again, when we come to storytelling, Arthur, how does animation integrates with other forms of art, like music, writing, and so forth?
So to put an animation product together, it takes a lot of moving parts. So we have to engage with the writer to say, okay, this is the story that we're telling. And then the writer has to give us a script. We have to integrate with a sound engineer, a producer, or musician to make sure that we have great sound, we have great music to accompany the story, to make sure that our voice artists are in a well-equipped studio to have clarity when they're doing their voiceovers, which leads me to voice artists who also have to then engage with voice artists who can be professional voice artists specifically, or they can be performers in the right of acting. And then, that all those people come together, as well as illustrators, because to make the cartoons, we need the illustrators. So it's a lot of different industries that are coming together to then form this world of animation.
Many people would think that animation is for children. Is it also meant, of course we know, so you gave an example of our screen here, but most of it, even from the past, people would think that maybe it's for children. Just tell us about the adults. Do they also, are they also targeted in animation?
Absolutely. There are quite a number of R-rated animations that are on screen, on different platforms, on the internet, where the language is very foul, that children cannot watch that. Or maybe just the content, the stories being told in those animations are not targeted at children, but they're targeted at adults. So no, animation is just not for children, but it's also for adults.
Yes. Well, besides the ethics, let's go to animation for adults. You are very clear that most of the animation for children is on edutainment and so forth. How about the one that you make for adults? What is the content that you normally concentrate on?
So for adults, it's mainly education. So if a company, for instance, wants to train a certain section of their business in something, they'll then approach an animator or an animation company with a curriculum, and they'll say, we would like to put this in a series of animations. May you please put this curriculum in animations? So that then they will then put it on whatever platform, an internal platform that they have, and then the employees can go to that platform for that series of training that the company requires.
Yes. Earlier when we were talking about putting food on the table, something that you emphasize that while you do it for entertainment, but at the end of the day, you have to make a living and so forth. But in doing that, there are also issues of copyright and other people stealing others' works and so forth. How are you dealing with that in animation to protect your works so that you don't find them being abused or being used without you getting anything?
Different people have different ways of dealing with it, but in the work that I do, paperwork is a very important aspect. When starting a project, it is important for people to sign certain documents of secrecy, and contractual documents to say what someone is doing within the project.
So that is binding?
That is binding. So if at any point something leaks or someone abuses intellectual copyright, then there is a paper trail for investigation purposes. But I cannot emphasize enough how important it is for there to be a paper trail and binding agreements when people get into projects.
As animators, do you have an association? We know book writers, authors and so forth, even those who do educational books have associations where they meet and actually discuss such issues. Have you gotten to that stage here in Zimbabwe?
I know once there was an association, but a lot of the animators then moved out of the country. So I don't know if that association still is around. However, I do know at the last film festival that was hosted in Harare, a group of animators did come together to speak about the animation industry in Zimbabwe and what projects they're working on and how to make it better.
And if a child came to their parents or to his or her parents, and they say, after my A levels, I want to do animation. Is this something that is easily accepted, like in your case?
In my case, it was a hard fight. Yes. And as I understand, it is still for quite a lot of people out there. But I do understand, and in my experience, I've met a lot of parents who are very receptive to their children going into animation, because the world that we're moving into is a very content-heavy world. Actually, the world that we're in right now is very content-heavy, and there's a lot of room for young animators to move and grow into.
Yes. One thing that happens in animation is that you can actually work from home or from an office, or you can even be doing animation, as you told me before we got into this program, that you even do animation for other countries while you are here in Zimbabwe. How does that happen?
One of the reasons I enjoy my work is I work from home. All I need is a good internet connection and a reliable team to work with. And half the time we're communicating on our phones, on the computer, we're sharing our files via the different platforms that we can share our files with. We're scheduling with the different project management programs that are available. And one can work from the comfort of their home or from anywhere in the world that you want to be at that point. And it's only specific points that you then have to be on site or with your team to perform specific tasks.
We're talking about payments, and you're emphasizing that it's important to go into some form of contract and so forth. And then issues of redress, are those usually easy to go through when you've done some beautiful work and nothing comes to your table, as you emphasize there?
Yeah.
How do you deal with that?
So dealing with payments.
Yes.
Dealing with payments, it starts from the contractual.
Yes.
So
it's like in any other business.
In any other business, yes. So if I am getting someone to come and do specific work for a project I'm working on, I have a call with them, and I either ask them for a rate, or I let them know how much money is there for that specific duty. Once there's a verbal agreement of what is being done and how much is going to be paid, then there's a written agreement, so that I am also held accountable that at the end of this project, I have to pay this person, otherwise they'll take me to task. And I really want to keep my record clean.
Well, since there's future in animation, from what Arthur is saying, that's Arthur Mataruse, who is a creative artist. He was our guest today on Economic Forum, and he was talking about the animation industry, how it is growing in Zimbabwe, particularly in education, edutainment, as well as in business. And he was also telling us about the opportunities for training as well as internships, and also the opportunities of being disciplined and being able to work from home. So what remains is to thank Arthur Mataruse, who is known in the industry. I've noticed you are also called at Baradzanwa Mataruse. So thank you very much for coming on to Economic Forum.
Thank you too,
And if you'd like to get in touch with us on different platforms, you can do so on the platforms that are showing on your screen. If you would like to watch some episodes of Economic Forum that you may have missed, you can do so on our YouTube channel, which is Economic Forum Zimbabwe. So on behalf of Arthur Mataruse, as well as the production crew, this is John Masugu signing off.